Veritas in tenebris. Lumen ad revelationem.
The winter was cruel that year, the kind that silences the birds and turns men's breath into ghosts. In a farmhouse tucked between the dead cornfields lived a boy named Timothy Caldwell, 8 years old, pale and quiet. His family claimed he hadn't eaten in weeks, that he hadn't slept in months, that sometimes, at night, they heard him whispering to voices that weren't there. Doctors came and went. Priests refused to stay, and the few who entered his room left with trembling hands. For every test, every examination, every prayer, only one thing remained certain. The boy was alive, but he shouldn't have been. This is the account of Dr. Samuel Harding, the physician who tried to explain Timothy's existence through science and instead lost faith in everything he believed. Dr. Harding's journey began on the 12th of December, 1867. Snow pressed against the windows of his small office when a letter arrived, written in shaky ink by Edwin Caldwell, the boy's father. It reads simply, "Our son endures without breath, without sleep. He frightens the others. Please come." Harding was a rational man, a follower of logic and anatomy, not faith. But something in the letter stirred him. He packed his medical bag, wrapped himself in his wool coat, and set off through the blizzard toward the Caldwell farmhouse. The place was quiet when he arrived. The fields outside were motionless, no footprints, no smoke from the chimney. Inside, Mrs. Caldwell greeted him with eyes that hadn't closed in days. She didn't speak much, only guided him toward the small room at the end of the hall. The door creaked open, and there, sitting perfectly still beside a dying candle, was Timothy. The boy didn't move. He didn't blink. Yet his eyes followed Harding the moment he stepped closer. Harding introduced himself softly, asked simple questions, the kind meant to test consciousness. The boy's lips barely parted, but his voice was clear. "You came from town," he said. "You left before the sun fell." Harding froze. Those were the exact words he had said to his driver before departing that morning. There was no way the boy could have known. He dismissed it at first as coincidence, perhaps the family had overheard. He examined Timothy's body, pulse slow but steady, skin cold, veins oddly faint beneath the flesh. He placed a mirror under the boy's nose, no fog, no breath, yet the child remained upright, staring. That night, Harding stayed in the house to observe. He took notes by lamplight, marking every hour. At midnight, a sound woke him, soft humming from Timothy's room. It wasn't a song, more like a low vibration, almost mechanical, resonating through the walls. He approached slowly. Through the cracked door, he saw the boy sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by frost, forming intricate shapes on the wooden planks. His eyes were rolled upward, and every few seconds, his mouth opened as though breathing in something unseen. When Harding entered, the sound stopped. The frost melted instantly. The boy turned his gaze toward him and whispered, "You shouldn't be here." By morning, Mrs. Caldwell begged Harding to leave. She said strange things happened when people stayed too long. Clocks stopped. Mirrors cracked. Animals refused to enter the house. Harding refused to go. The scientist in him needed answers. He began testing Timothy's reactions. He pricked his finger. The boy didn't bleed. He tried shining light into his eyes, no dilation. Yet, when Harding turned his back, he could feel the boy's stare piercing through the room. By the 5th night, something changed. The snow outside had grown heavier, and the family's lanterns flickered out one by one. Harding sat in the parlor writing notes when a heavy thud echoed upstairs. He rushed toward the sound and found Mr. Caldwell lying face down on the floor beside Timothy's bed. The man's eyes were wide open, his skin pale as if drained of every drop of blood. The boy sat beside him, unmoving, whispering something inaudible. Harding checked for a pulse. Nothing. He turned toward Timothy and shouted, demanding an explanation. The boy tilted his head and said softly, he asked for proof. Panic set in. Harding barricaded himself in the study with his journal and a single candle. The pages that followed would later be found in fragments, but one entry remained intact. The boy does not breathe. He does not sleep. He seems to feed upon something unseen, the life, the warmth of the living. When I approach, I feel a pull, as though the very air between us belongs to him." On the seventh night, Harding resolved to end the experiment. He gathered his instruments, prepared a syringe of chloroform, and entered the boy's room. But Timothy was already waiting, sitting upright, his eyes brighter than before. "You think you're the first," the boy said, smiling faintly. "You all try to understand, you all fail." The lamp flickered. The air thickened with a sound like thousands of faint whispers rising from beneath the floorboards. Harding's vision blurred, and for a moment he saw others, silhouettes of men in old-fashioned coats, their faces blank, standing around the boy. He stumbled backward, gasping, and the sound ceased. Timothy stood, slowly stepping forward. "You asked what keeps me alive," the boy murmured. "Would you like to feel it?" Harding's journal ends their mid-sentence, ink smeared by what looks like water or tears. The following morning, neighbors discovered the house silent. The snow outside was undisturbed except for a single trail of barefoot prints leading into the woods. Neither the doctor nor the Caldwell family was ever seen again. When authorities finally entered, they found the boy's room cold to the touch. Frost covered the walls in spiraling patterns, like veins branching outward. In the center sat a chair, turned toward the window. On the table beside it lay Harding's medical bag, empty. Inside one of its pockets was a small folded note in the doctor's handwriting. "He is not alive. He is remembered." Over the years, locals told stories. Some claimed they saw a pale child wandering the tree line during heavy snowfalls, whispering the names of those who were soon to die. Others said the farmhouse still stands, though no one can find it twice. Every map drawn of the area changes after nightfall, as if the land itself hides the memory. Historians dismissed it as folklore. The journals were deemed elaborate fiction, but a curious detail remains, one of Dr. Harding's instruments, a thermometer, was recovered decades later in a museum archive in St. Louis. Its mercury was frozen solid, sealed under glass, though no one could explain how. Whether Timothy Caldwell was a case of suspended animation, a spiritual anomaly, or something beyond human comprehension, no one truly knows. But in every record of the case, one fact persists: the boy's body was never found. Soft whisper, fading into static. "You all try to understand. You all fail." The whisper fades. The candlelight dies. Thank you for watching Obscure Testament. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more terrifying stories from the shadows. The road to the Caldwell farmhouse was buried beneath layers of untouched snow. Dr. Samuel Harding traveled alone, guided only by the flicker of his lantern and the faint echo of hooves beneath him. He was a man of logic, the kind who believed every question had an answer, every miracle a hidden mechanism. But that belief began to crack the moment he saw the house. It stood at the edge of a field that should have been empty. No smoke rose from the chimney, no footprints marked the earth. Yet through one upstairs window, a candle burned with unwavering light, a signal or a warning. When Harding entered, the warmth of the fire did little to disguise the cold that clung to the air. Mrs. Caldwell met him first, her expression half prayer, half exhaustion. She said little, leading him upstairs to a door she had sealed with a strip of cloth. The smell of wax and old wood filled his lungs. Inside, the boy sat beside the window, his reflection faint in the glass. Harding greeted him softly. No answer. He stepped closer, and the boy turned his head, not slowly, not naturally, but with sudden precision, as if drawn by invisible strings. His eyes were black with dilation, his skin translucent beneath the lamplight. For a long moment neither spoke. Then Timothy whispered, "You came too late." From that instant, the doctor's curiosity twisted into unease. His journey, meant to explain, had already begun to unravel. Harding devoted his first 2 days to examination. He documented every detail: temperature consistent at 62 degrees Fahrenheit, no visible pulse, no sign of respiration. Yet the boy's body remained warm, pliant, living. Harding tried to provoke a reaction, shining light into the boy's pupils, testing reflexes with a small metal probe. Each time, Timothy remained unresponsive, except when Harding whispered under his breath. Then, as if hearing thoughts instead of words, the boy would smile faintly and repeat the sentence back to him. The doctor began to suspect suggestion, hypnosis, something psychological. But when he asked the boy where he had learned to mimic others, Timothy replied, "I don't learn, I remember." That night, Harding kept watch beside the boy's bed. Near midnight, a faint vibration shook the air, not sound, not wind, but something that made the glass of the oil lamp tremble. The boy's body stiffened, eyes fluttering open, pupils expanding into complete blackness. Harding touched his wrist, no pulse. Yet the boy spoke, "You're counting seconds that don't belong to you." Harding withdrew his hand, his scientific certainty beginning to erode. Every tool he trusted, thermometer, stethoscope, reason betrayed him. For the first time in his life, the physician began to fear the living more than the dead. By the third day, word of Timothy's condition reached the nearby parish. A local priest visited, reciting prayers over the child while Harding took notes. Midway through the rite, Timothy began to recite the prayer along with him, not from memory, but in perfect synchronization, even mouthing the priest's hesitations and stutters. Harding later recorded that the boy repeated full sentences the moment they were conceived, before lips could shape them, as though thought itself was merely an echo. Mrs. Caldwell claimed the boy had been different since the fever months earlier, when his breathing had stopped for 3 full minutes. They thought he was gone until his eyes opened again, whispering, "It's cold there." From that moment onward, he never aged, never grew weak, and never slept. Harding tested him with drawings, questions, even Latin phrases. The boy answered them all. He described places he'd never seen, people long dead, and details of Harding's own life that no one could have known, including the name of his deceased wife. When asked how he knew, Timothy said simply, "I see what you leave behind when you dream." Harding stopped writing for the rest of that night. The next morning, he found frost creeping along the walls, forming the faint outline of a human hand. It happened on the 5th night. Mr. Caldwell was found lifeless beside his son's bed, eyes wide open, mouth frozen mid-breath. His skin was gray, veins collapsed, every drop of blood seemingly gone. Harding examined him. There was no sign of struggle, no wound, no trace of poison. The boy sat silently beside the corpse, humming softly. Mrs. Caldwell screamed until her voice broke, demanding to know what had happened. The boy turned to her and said, "He asked to know what keeps me alive." Harding tried to reason with her, to explain natural causes, but even he could feel something unnatural clinging to the air, a weight, a pressure, a sense of being watched by something just outside the edge of sight. That night, Harding wrote his most damning entry. "This is not sickness, this is preservation. Something has chosen this boy as its vessel." Sleep eluded him. When he closed his eyes, he dreamt of standing at the foot of the boy's bed, surrounded by dozens of pale figures. Their faces were blurred, but their eyes were open, watching. When he awoke, the frost on the window had formed those same faceless shapes. Harding began to unravel. He no longer trusted the daylight. It made the house look too normal. He started to hear breathing in the walls, murmurs in the pipes, his own name spoken in the child's voice from rooms that were empty. He stopped eating, stopped leaving the house, writing only in fragments. He does not need warmth. One note reads, "He drinks memory." The more Harding observed Timothy, the more he noticed subtle changes. Shadows lingered longer where the boy sat. The ticking of clocks slowed when he entered a room. Harding attempted to record these phenomena using his instruments, but every device failed. Thermometers froze, watches stopped, ink thinned to water. In desperation, Harding considered ending the boy's life to end the curse. But when he approached with a syringe of chloroform, Timothy looked at him and whispered, "Would you kill yourself to feel alive again?" The doctor dropped the syringe. The boy smiled, a slow, deliberate smile that felt centuries old. By the seventh night, Harding's reason was gone. He had written to the church, to the university, to anyone who might believe him. No one came. He entered Timothy's room one last time, carrying a lantern and his journal. The boy was awake, sitting cross-legged, eyes black and reflective. The walls were covered in frost, spiraling outward from where he sat. "Tell me what you are," Harding demanded. Timothy tilted his head. "You called me an anomaly. You made me real by naming me." The doctor pressed him further, begging for truth. The boy rose, took one slow step forward, and the lantern dimmed. "I am what's left when memory forgets the body," Timothy whispered. "And you're next." Harding tried to flee, but the air thickened, sound vanished. His journal ends mid-sentence. The ink smeared as though his hand had been yanked away. When neighbors found the farmhouse days later, they discovered no bodies. The snow outside was smooth, untouched, except for a single trail of small footprints leading into the forest. Inside, the rooms were frozen solid. The windows were lined with frost shaped like reaching hands. On the table sat Harding's open journal and a single note written in trembling ink. "He is not alive. He is remembered." Years later, locals claimed to see a pale child wandering the woods during snowstorms. Some heard whispers at their windows, others woke to frost-forming names on their mirrors. The farmhouse was eventually demolished, yet travelers still report lights flickering where it once stood. Historians called it myth. Scientists dismissed it, but every attempt to destroy Harding's journal failed. The ink never faded, the pages never rotted, and perhaps that's the true horror, not the boy himself, but the memory that refuses to die. Even now, when the wind moves through the trees of Sedalia, some swear they hear a child's voice beneath the snow, whispering, "You all try to understand, you all fail."